Hello and welcome to Universal Heritage Television Niger. Here again is another edition of our breakfast show, Daybreak Niger. In today's package, we are going to talk about July 29, 1966. That is a day that is very, very significant, though on a sad note, to Igbo. And my guest to discuss the matter is Martins Ori, a senior journalist in Imo State, as well as the publisher of the New Oriental newspaper. Martins, you are welcome to our program.
Thank you very much, Afam.
Yeah, my name is Afam Echi. Please remember to give us thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube platform. Martins, let's go straight to the issue. Now, can you give us a brief insight, a brief information on what actually transpired, the events, the incidents that led to this particular day where over 380 Igbo people were massacred, which includes 162 army officers, and that subtracts so much from, the positive development that should have accrued to Igbo, assuming these people were to be alive.
Yeah, Afam, thank you very much. As you rightly said, it is a very sad note every year when July 29 comes up. To start with, July 29 didn't just happen. It was as a result of what happened on January 15, 1966, when a coup led by Major Nzogu was actually termed to be an Igbo coup. The person who planned that coup, so to say, who wrote it, who scripted it, and delivered it was Major Emmanuel Ifajuna. But he handed it over to Nzogu, and Nzogu took over the show, became the star boy, the poster boy of the coup, and actually took part in what was the hardest point of that coup, which was the Kaduna expedition. And at the end of it all, the Prime Minister of Nigeria, the first and only Prime Minister of Nigeria, Tafawa Balewa, died. The Premier of Northern Region, Ahmad Bello, died. The Premier of Western Nigeria, Esala Akintola, died. The Finance Minister, Kotuebo, died. Then in the military, Ademelogu, lost his life. Soshinde lost his life. So many of them lost. Malari, lost his life. In all, only one Igbo person died. Unegbe, who was in charge of the armory, we were told, refused to submit the keys to the armory of that coup, and he was killed. He was the only Igbo that died. In all, there were over 27 persons that participated in that coup. But the senior persons that led the coup were mostly of Igbo extraction. So it was wrongly believed that it was an Igbo coup, but it was not actually an Igbo coup. It was a national action. So at the end of the day,
you said it was a national
affair. It was a national affair. The coup was a national affair because so many other officers that were not Igbo, participated in the coup. But the key officers were, mainly of Igbo officers. Talk of Chukuma Nzogu, Martin Sanoforo, Ben Bulie, they were all of Igbo. So that made people to believe. And the person who announced the coup, Chukuma Nzogu, was also an Igbo person who, even before that coup, must not have set his feet on any Igbo side because he was born and bred in Kaduna. That was what his name was, Chukuma Kaduna Nzogu. So they were all Nigerian military officers who believed in the cause of Nigeria. They were embittered with what was happening in the country, especially in Western Nigeria, where we had wide in the West, where there was a very frosty relationship between Awolowo and the SLO Akintola, to quench it and to get Nigeria from continue drifting. To capture it all, in the announcement of the coup, Nzogu said, we have seized power to stamp out corruption, nepotism, regionalism, and religionism That was what he said. All these things were national maladies. So, but eventually, Nigeria being what it is, it was said, in fact, the coup was well received. But when they started seeing the casualties, the victims of January 15, the northern elements now started reading meaning into it. Why was Zik not killed? Why was no, the man in Enugu, not killed. Okay. The thing was that Okpara was receiving an Archbishop of Cyprus, who stayed in, and the people said it's not good for us to kill this visitor. Okay. Let us wait for Okpara in the morning. Before the morning came, they slept off. While Okpara went to the airport to see Bishop of the Cyprus off, they couldn't get hold of him. Why Zik took permission to go overseas for medical reasons. So this was why these people were. So after the coup, Ironsi, who was the most senior army officer at that time, took over. Mind you, Ironsi remains the only man in history that have ruled Nigeria as a head of state that had instrument of authority conferred on him. The Senate sat, led by the Democratic Senate President of Nigeria. What is his name now? From Anambra. Nwaforizu and his men sat and handed over the instrumentality of leadership on Ironsi, which means he didn't come as a coup plotter. He was conferred with ligaments of authority. Now, when Ironsi took over, so people were not happy. They said the Ironsi ought to have, after he stabilized the country, he's supposed to have handed over to the next to the most senior Northern People's Congress leader, who was Dapri. That he was still alive. He ought to have, he didn't want to continue. The Northern element said, which means that the thing was pre-discussed. So, and now you started, you now ask yourself, Zik was the president of Nigeria. So, what was Igbo people to gain when Zik was the president of Nigeria? Nwaforiz was the Senate president. The commander of the army was this Ironsi. Igbo people had nothing to gain in the coup. You go to any ministry, the Igbo man, if not being the minister, is the pansec or the director. So Igbo people had nothing to gain. Of the three VCs we had in Nigeria then, in Ibadan, KODK was the VC, in Lagos, Eninjok was the VC, and in Suka, the Igbo man was the VCs. So Igbo people had nothing to lose in the First Republic. So after the northern elements gave this interpretation, which also you don't have to blame them, the casualties, so to say, were more in their. They cried because of the loss of Ahmad Bello, the loss of Tafawa Balewa, the loss of my Malari. It was not easy to bear. Then Ironsi came and came up with what you call Decree 34. Decree 34 that unified Nigeria.
Set up a central administration.
Set up a central. They said Igbo people wanted to dominate Nigeria, and that was any explanation to tell them that Ironsi did that thing so that they can have a sole control of what was happening did not get into their ears. So at the end of the day, the counter coup started in the process, and before that there were.
Before you get to the counter coup, and still, when they dealt this, many people are still at a loss, trying to reconcile. The coup was aborted somewhere in Kano and
exactly. Ojukwu aborted the coup in Kano, and Madeba aborted the coup in Kaduna. Ironsi aborted the coup in Lagos.
Yes.
Why Ojukwu did not allow it out? Ojukwu did not allow it in Kano. Yes.
Ironsi aborted
it in Lagos.
So these are all Igbo,
and they were. So if it were an Igbo coup, if it were an Igbo coup, so how did the Igbo people also go? How did the Igbo people also go against it? And then you talk about for so many other things.
But today, many Nigerians still live with this idea that it was an Igbo coup, and it has continued to haunt.
That is why we are here to tell them that it was not an Igbo coup. Okay, in the instance now, in what is happening now at the center in Abuja, the president of Nigeria is a Yoruba. The chief of staff is a Yoruba. Yes. The chief of army staff is a Yoruba. The IG is a Yoruba. The man collecting the revenue of Nigeria is a Yoruba. The acting CBN governor is a Yoruba. Does that make it to be a Yoruba government? The answer is no. Okay. The answer is no. So for the mere fact that is a coincidental issue.
Okay. Okay. Now, at a point, you know, what actually, some of this, the issue you narrated now, dovetailed gradually when there was a counter coup into the war, into the civil war.
Yeah.
And Gowon played a significant role.
Yeah.
And what actually made Ojukwu declare the civil war is Gowon reneging on the
principle of Aburi.
Okay. So why do you think, what prompted his going back on the Aburi?
Let's come to the counter coup, the July 29 counter coup. Okay. So after the January coup of January 15, it was actually on a Saturday night to Sunday morning. You know, the northern elements, believing that the coup was against them, now started plotting. Yeah. There were, you know, crises in April, May, where many Igbo people were killed in the north. In April, May, and June, before the July coup. Everything put together. Ojukwu gave graphic account of how many Igbo people that lost their lives, and few what we used to call Eastern minorities, comprising of Rivers, Bayelsa, Cross River, and Akwa Ibom now. We used to call them Eastern minorities. Ojukwu gave a graphic account from April, May, June, and July, and said that approximately 50,000 Igbo people were massacred between 1966 and before the Biafra Declaration. Now, the high point of it all was on July 29, when 162 army officers of Igbo extractions were killed. The most appalling, the most shocking was the death of Major Donatus Okrafo, who was buried alive. There was, you know, on that night, they identified him as one of those who killed Sasadwana 6 months before, on January 15, as a punishment, as a reward. They buried him alive and eventually kidnapped Hiroshi himself alongside his oath, the military governor of Western Nigeria. And all of the both of them were assassinated. After the killing, Gowon announced himself as the successor of Ironsi. Ojukwu said it cannot happen. On what grounds? On the grounds that in January, Ironsi was the most senior army officer. He took over. Ojukwu now said, in this July counter coup, a precedent has been set where in the army, you don't jump. We take processes, we queue. Gowon, as at that time, was not the most senior army officer. After Ironsi, there was Babafemi Ogundikwe. After Babafemi Ogundikwe, there was Robert Adebayo. After Robert Adebayo, there was Philip Effiong. After Philip Effiong, there was Alexander Maduebo, Ojukwu himself. Ojukwu mentioned 9-10 officers that ought to have come before Gowon and said Gowon was not the right person.
Appropriately, it should be Ogundipe.
It was Ogundipe that's supposed to take over. But when Ogundipe heard that Ironsi was dead, was killed, he went back to the military cantonment in Ikeja, wanted to call a meeting. In the meeting, the northern officers refused to take instructions from him that they are not secured in the lives of any southern officer. If you look at the 10 or 9 persons that came before Gowon, they were all from south. Yeah. Ogundikwe and Adebayo from the west. Yeah. Maduebo, Ojukwu from the southeast now, and then Philip Effiong from the south. So the military element said they were not secured again in anything called southern Nigeria. For that, the only person they knew was in Gowon. Ogundikwe ran away to London and never came back to Nigeria until he died. You understand? So it was on that grounds Ojukwu said that militarily, Gowon was not supposed to be the commander, the supreme military commander, and that was how
the military rule.
Yes, and that was how the crisis started, and that was what Ojukwu continued to talk. And he asked them, "You have not told me what happened to the supreme commander. Where is Aguiyi-Ironsi?" They invited him to come to Lagos. He refused. He said, "My life is not safe." They invited him to come to Ibadan. He said, "Where you killed Ironsi, you also want to kill me there." They invited him to Benin. He refused. "Where do you want us to come?" Ojukwu said, "Anywhere outside Nigeria." And that was how Ghana, that has the same background, the same history, almost the same political culture with Nigeria. Ghana was showing because of General Ankara, who said, I can host the meeting. They went to Ghana in a place called Eburi. Here we call it Aburi. If you go to Ghana, they call it Eburi. They went Eburi, Ghana on the 4th and 5th January 1967. After a 2-day comprehensive, complete conference, Ojukwu stayed on one ground, that the way Nigeria is structured right now is not easy for the East to do anything in common with the rest of the country. Everything is very toxic. On that grounds, Ojukwu said, it is better for us to shift and survive than coming together and die. Gowon being a very simple person. Gowon has his father was a pastor. So Gowon is not a very terrible person, so to say. Gowon saw reasons in what Ojukwu was saying and signed. When they came back to Nigeria here, the Palm Sex and the other leaders that were not in a buri started blaming Gowon. Why did you sign this? They started distorting the Aburi agreement. After, by the time Ojukwu saw what the federal government was doing, Ojukwu now said that, I'm giving you 2 weeks to implement the Aburi Accord. After that, I'll pull out from Nigeria. Instead of implementing the Aburi Accord, Gowon on May 27th, 1967, created more states. And by that time, he created River State out of the east, to reduce Ojukwu's influence and strength. Ojukwu was mad. Ojukwu now said, "On Aburi we stand." On the 30th of May, Ojukwu declared Biafra. But there's something people do not know. Ojukwu didn't just declare Biafra. The leaders and elders of Eastern Nigeria, the Eastern Consultative Assembly
and the Council of Elders Chiefs,
they met, headed by Zik himself. Zik was there. Mado, the lawyer from Anambra, Francis Okibo, all of them, they were all there. They mandated Ojukwu. They were the person who said, at the earliest possible time, pull Eastern Nigeria out of Nigeria. Ojukwu was, his hands were tied. He told them that it was not going to easy. They say, on Biafra we stand. That was what was agreed in Ghana.
Yeah, but today it is, most people hold it against Ojukwu himself that he declared a war that consumed, that whatever the Igbo is passing through, they're putting it on Ojukwu. When appropriately, he didn't do that alone. The truth is this. It was Harry Truman, the man who succeeded Franklin Roosevelt, who said that the buck stops at the president's table. The buck stops at the president's table. If the Biafran cause had gone well, Ojukwu would have also taken the glory. So as he didn't come out well, he should also take the blame. It was not Ojukwu's Biafra. It was not Ojukwu's singular idea. The word Biafra was not even Ojukwu's word. In mind you, the Portuguese had already carved out bite of Biafra. And the person who suggested that word, Biafra, is today a king in Bayelsa. He's still alive. I will remember his name. The man who suggested the name Biafra for during the period. Yes, he's now a king in the Bayelsa state. He's an old man. He's 80s or 90s. You understand? So, and the secretary of Biafra was Eniyu Akpan. Okay.
The deputy to Ojukwu was Effiong. So it was not Ojukwu's anything. But what happened was that Ojukwu was the helm of the affairs. Why people blame Ojukwu was that Ojukwu was at the helm of affairs. If he had calmed them down at any cost, if he had said, my people, this thing will not work. If Ojukwu had insisted that let us continue negotiation or negotiating, let us continue negotiating, Biafra wouldn't have come. But it also appeared that Ojukwu was interested in Biafra. Yes. Who wouldn't be?
Because of the humiliation.
Because of the Ojukwu was insulted, Ojukwu was annoyed, Ojukwu was humiliated. So you don't blame him. He deserves part of the blames, but I mean, it is...
As a leader.
As a leader, yes. But saying that it was... my brother, it's very hard to put Ojukwu away, and it's also very hard to give him the praises.
Yeah. Now, that is a very significant event. Some people are wondering, why is it that Ndi Igbo have not been able to maybe commemorate, pick out that date to commemorate? You see, what we are seeing is agitation. Those dates, when they come, like we're going into...
July 29.
Yeah, we're in July 29 already. And then there is a warning from the IPOB that people should stay back home, the sit-at-home thing. And when it comes to May 30th, there is also agitation. So why is it that the governors in the southeast will not pick any of these dates, or Ndibo generally, and mark it as a day to remember some of this? You see, because when it is recognized as a national day in Igbo land, and you know, maybe that July 2019, they say no celebration, people should mourn, or there should be something attached to that date to remember, because a lot of lives were lost. You know, so many families...
Let me answer you straight away. Don't go to much emphasis. The truth is that the Nigerian oligarchy, the Nigerian establishment, the Nigerian government does not want to hear anything Biafra. Anything Biafra is very poisonous as long as the Nigerian system is concerned. So the Southeast governors you are talking about wouldn't like a situation where the federal government of Nigeria will feel angered, we feel angry, we tag them as Biafra agitators. That is, you have to ask yourself, why was it that when the late Chukwu Umerije in the House of Senate presented the idea that let Ojukwu be buried as a hero, as a statesman, it was they killed it. Senate killed it. Senate killed it. It was Jonathan who took it upon himself that this man deserved to be buried as a hero. If Ojukwu had died at any other time, if Ojukwu had died during the time of Buhari, if Ojukwu dies now, if Ojukwu has died now, in this Ojukwu, the kind of celebration, the heroism, the heroic burial Jonathan gave to him wouldn't have happened. That is what is making this July 29, May 30 to look as if it's not being celebrated. But the Biafra agitators, maybe in a very wrong approach, the way they are doing it, you cannot celebrate and say people to stay at home. That is not a very good celebration. People should come, fanfare, people should come, enjoy themselves in the drumming. That a particular war was fought and we survived it. If you ask me, the 30 months of the Civil War still remains the best of the Igbo, because in wartime, Igbo had their own television services. In wartime, Afam, the Biafra airport at Uli was among the busiest airports in Africa. In wartime, Igbo manufactured Obubuligwe that challenged the almighty naval, military, and air forces of Nigeria. In wartime, Igbo produced the refined oil. Radio Biafra was heard all over the world. In wartime, Igbo flew their own jets. Everything was happening here. It was only that the Nigerian government in the middle of that war changed the currency, and that was what brought, and since Biafra had not been yet recognized globally, they can't do exchange with their currency, and it did as if there were starvation here. So Igbo ought to be celebrating Biafra, but the truth is that the federal government of Nigeria, are you aware?
Martin, let me counter here, because if you think we should not be celebrating culturally, today we do Nigeria Army Day, January whatever it is. So if we celebrate those who died You know.
Who are you talking of? The Igbo or talking of?
I mean the Nigerians. Nigeria.
Yeah, it's Nigeria. You will be directing that question to.
So
not to the Southeast.
We the Southeasterners should originate it and say, well, this is what we want.
It will not fly, Afam. It has to tell you that it will not fly. It can't go anywhere. It cannot go. Nigeria does not want to hear anything Biafra. That is just the truth.
Finally, maybe we may need to do more discussion on this. But before I let you go, now this is 53 years after the Civil War. Even after the Civil War ended, Gowon declared no victor, no vanquished. But the Biafra agitation is still there. The Biafra spirit is still there. And people are still not happy with what is happening. Igbo as Nigerians are not appear properly integrated. So what do you think needs to be done?
Yeah, the no victor, no vanquish declaration of Gowon, that was what was expected, because both Gowon and Ojukwu recorded successes. Gowon wanted Nigeria back. Yes. Gowon wanted Biafra back to Nigeria, and wanted Nigeria wanted Igbo to continue as part and parcel of Nigeria. While Ojukwu, on the other part, wanted Igbo not to die, not to be exterminated.
Completely, because it was a genocide.
It was a genocide that was visited on Igbo, and Ojukwu also had successes in that area. So Gowon had his own, Ojukwu had his own. But the truth is this: the person to blame for not reintegrating Igbo back to Nigeria is Obasanjo himself, who was the commissioner of works, who supervised the Gowon's 3 hours of reconciliation, rehabilitation, and reconstruction. Yeah. We challenge Obasanjo to tell us which Igbo people did he rehabilitate, which project did he reconstruct, which thing did he do anything? He didn't do anything. Even what was done was that Igbo was giving 20 pounds to start life with. It was also under Obasanjo, who on September 28, 1979, 2 days before he left office, who promulgated Decree 90.
Okay, indigenous.
The issue of abandoned property. It was Obasanjo who did it, and also promulgated what Gowon started in 1971, the issue of indigenization, when he knew that Igbo had no kobo to buy anything, and he did it.
And that excluded Igbo.
And that excluded, look at
economic power.
How can we talking about 36 state structure, and the Southeast is the one that has the list of 5. 774 local government, the list is in the Southeast. 109 senators, we have only 15, and that was why it was very easy to continue impeaching every successive Igbo Senate president. So look at the last administration of President Muhammadu Buhari. The biggest, the largest, the most expensive project they carried in Nigeria was the railway, and in that railway, none crisscrossed the Southeast. These are the things we are talking. He built 7 federal universities. None was located in the Southeast. What are we talking about?
And that is why the Biafra
agitation is on, because the youth are saying that the Nigerian system does not factor them in. So allow us to go. You don't blame them. What the Tinubu administration ought to be doing now is to look into the marginalization of Igbo, of the Southeast, in roads, in federal infrastructure, federal appointments, so many things. The worst federal roads are in the Southeast. And these are the things that has made the Biafra agitation very popular in the Southeast.
Okay. Thank you so much, Martin, for coming to our program.
Thank you, Afam.
Yeah. Viewers, this is where we draw the curtain. You have heard him so much, talking about the roles some Nigerian personalities played during the Civil War, and why the Biafran spirit is still on. That is an information for the federal authorities to work on. On this note, I sign off. My name again is Afam Echi. Please remember to like our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube platform.